Welcome everyone to the Thursday, April 13th, 2023 Helm Developer Call. As a reminder, this is recorded, it's put out on the internet, it's under the CNCF Code of Conduct. If you don't want your stuff to be seen or heard, then don't speak up and say it. Otherwise, it's going to be out there. And so today's agenda, we can start off with a couple of announcements before we get into any discussion, which is rather light. So if anybody has discussion topics here, please enter them into today's agenda. I just dropped it into chat there. The first announcement that I've got is Helm 3.11.3 is out. It went out yesterday on schedule for our release Wednesday. This has, I think the two big things in it, there were three of them. So the two that I can think of is there were a number of dependencies updated that had CVEs in them. I don't think those CVEs actually affected Helm itself, but they showed up in scans. The second thing is it turns out we had a couple of memory leaks. They didn't show up in Helm if you use it as a CLI because the program finishes execution. But if you have long running things built on the SDK, basically you can have, the hanging Chad Go routines that can sometimes happen where a Go routine doesn't exit because it's waiting. There were some situations where that could happen and people ran into that. And those have been fixed. There was one other issue that was fixed and I'm forgetting what it was now, but it's a good one to update to. And the next second Wednesday in May will be Helm 3.12, which we're developing on now. Karen, you have something you want to share.
Yeah, just a reminder that if anyone is IQCon, we do have a session that will be presented by Scott, Andy, and Karina, and they'll be talking about learning the code Helm base and the PR review process. So, I'll drop in the time for that, but that will be on Wednesday, the first day of the event at 11 a.m. So that's all.
All right. Does anybody have any other announcements?
I suppose there's always the booth staffing, the project pavilion staffing sheet. I still need to fill that out more, but
I will link to it in the notes after, but I think we are still missing staffing for Wednesday, and that's like the main one. I think Matt and I picked up the Friday shift. So if anyone can help out on Wednesday, that'd be super helpful.
I wish I could. That's the one afternoon that I can't. Otherwise, I would.
I should be able to. Oh, I don't know why my camera's not working. Anyway, this is Scott. I should be able to.
I was like, there's this disembodied voice.
It's a ghost. Yeah, I'll fill out the sheet.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Then with that, we can go into discussion. And I wasn't sure whether to put this as a discussion or an announcement, but I figured we can talk about it. I've been in contact with some maintainers who have either met the criteria for just automatically falling off of Helm Core because they haven't done anything in a certain period of time, which is laid out in our governance, or who have been essentially inactive and it's been hard to get a hold of them. And so we've got some folks who are going to go emeritus. This will make voting in some of those things a little bit easier. But it will make it a little bit more difficult, of course, to get PR reviews. But then again, they weren't doing them anyway. What this will mean is we are definitely looking out for more active full maintainers to dig into the source code. And I'm willing to mentor and teach and help folks learn that. But that is one of those things coming. I'll probably have the pull request up here shortly because we've gone through email. Everybody's agreed to everything. And so now it's just a matter of doing this. It is going to impact the Helm org maintainers and just a number of things, but we do have some folks stepping down.
Curious, what kind of a time commitment comes with being a maintainer?
It very much varies. It depends. We would like people to be around and to be active doing pull requests. And we know things go through cycles. You may have some weeks where you can't do much and other weeks where you can put in a little bit of time. Some people have had over the course of time enough time to put in full-time work, which I don't think we expect out of anybody right now. And nobody does that. Usually it is a handful of hours a week or less.
Thanks.
Usually when we're going through something major is when you'll see people spike up and do a lot more time. Like when we did the OCI work, or when we did Helm v3 and made changes. You'll see spikes of work when people do a lot of change work. Right now it's mostly more minimal things because Helm is mostly in a steady state development. If we have a number of active maintainers who want to go do a big thing, such as a Helm version 4 or a major effort, that's where they'll organize and, you know, do more time, but that's about it. Does anyone have any questions about this?
What would you what would you look for apart from just time from a maintainer, I guess?
So wow, okay. So I haven't really thought about this, and that's something I should probably put into Word somewhere. So this is off the top of my head right now. One, somebody who's willing to do PR reviews and deal with issues, things like that, right? They're willing to put in the time to do that. And that's going to look different for different people at different times. Some weeks you may not have any time. Some weeks you may be able to put in a few hours of time, just reviewing, giving feedback, things like that. You're somebody who will probably go spend time fixing bugs. For example, you see bugs come in, things like that, you'll attempt to fix them. You're probably more interested in the ones that affect you personally. Like we had the memory leak issue that somebody had reported, and over at SUSE, we use Helm, the SDK, and some long-running services. And of course, I wanted to see that fixed. I was personally motivated to go fix that one myself because those memory leaks impact our code. And so you'll see things like that where people go fix things. They might do features, but they're also able to give feedback on pull requests. They'll show up at meetings and do things like chair meetings or take notes or things like that. Then you'll also have folks who represent us places, right? There's things like the booth work, but there's also things like giving the presentations at conferences, or if somebody comes and asks questions to you somewhere, you can represent the project as being somebody on the project. Now, in order to do this, you have to learn the code and learn the processes and learn the reasons things are there. A bunch of that stuff's in HIPs. So a bunch of it's in code. We have decent documentation in code, and some of it you sometimes need to track down people, even people who aren't maintainers anymore, just to figure out why the heck did we do this. And so sometimes you got to go track somebody down and do that work. And a lot of times, as a past maintainer, you're willing to say, "This is the reason we did it." You explain it. You know, be up for that once your time's up. Those are the kinds of things that I can think of.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Oh, can I add one more? Well, okay, this is not
Please.
necessarily mass requirement, more of just like another thing that you could do. We haven't been doing them, but as a graduated project, we're also able to participate in CNCF's online like programs. So like we can do webinars and things like that. So yeah, you would be able to help create content. Yeah. Not that you would have to, but you could.
And some of that stuff is a good opportunity to learn and showcase skills, right? So being able to present your project and show it off and explain things is something that translates into learning skills for people who don't have those skills. Some people already have it, and learning how to do those skills that you can then translate over to other work you're going to end up doing. Me over time having to present Helm and other things and talk about them really helped me learn how to get up and speak and to communicate clearly on things, understand who the end user is, and communicate to them in language and terms that they'll understand. And so I think there's a lot of useful skills in doing those things that you learn that translate elsewhere. Okay. So any other questions on that? Then with that, I will pass it off to George. You've got a topic, how to make progress on pull requests.
Hopefully that's not too much affected by the stepping down of maintainers. But I mean, I've been trying to help out just, I don't know, I use open source a lot, and it's nice to try and contribute back, of course.
Yeah.
And one thing that's kind of, I mean, there's always a steady stream of issues, and triaging them is, I think it's died down somewhat. Joe might agree, or at least seems to be manageable now. To me, it does at least. But there's a lot of outstanding PRs. Some of this relates to what you've just said by a lot of these PRs. Simon's got some workflow they'd like to be improving for themselves, and they're trying to contribute some flag, and so it's not always clear as to what features Helm wants to accept, I guess, in a certain sense. And then there's HIPs. So the reason I bring this up is a lot of those PRs could be classified like this, and the other ones, which we probably, bug fixes or things, just like how to just chuck through them. Like they don't have to be. I think there's 350 PRs out there. They obviously don't have to be all done by any set deadline in the short term, but I guess it would be nice to be like, this is not going to be accepted, reject, or HIP or something. I don't know, just to minimize this backlog. Well, this is the way I normally look at things, but overall, just making progress on getting things merged, which people want and would help, would be the goal.
So I think this is a wonderful question. And what I think we probably should do, right, is we have some maintainers stepping down, hopefully some new ones coming in with votes and things, is probably sit down and clearly document this. What's in scope, what's out of scope, and what should be handled. We have long had certain ideals, and I think we should talk them out again and maybe carve out some time for the next meeting, which will be in 2 weeks, or the week after, or something like that, to go over this, right? And to document that, because then we can communicate to outsiders, here's what's in scope, here's what's out of scope, here's that gray area we're going to need to discuss, and here's how you should handle certain situations. So that way they know, and they don't have to come to us on each one. Anybody who's triaging can go read and reference it, right? I think we should do that. For a number of the things that are things we'd be interested in that are stuck, it's kind of been a maintainer thing. We've had a number of maintainers who have gone off on other things. And this is something that's, if I'm honest, is hitting a number of CNCF projects, even a number of graduated projects, because the people who create things are often people who like to create things, and they go on to create the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then there's different people who like to maintain things over the long haul, and keep them going and give life to them. You run into lots of situations like that, and a lot of CNCF projects haven't been great about backfilling. And of course, people worked at companies and they'll go work on what the companies pay them to. And you're seeing this all over the CNCF, where people switch jobs and they're not paid for it, or companies have pulled them in to work on internal things now that external things have become different. And so you see priority shifts, stuff like that. And so this is a common thing, but we'll need to onboard some more maintainers to help with it and just clearly bring them up to speed and help them with it. And so I think some of this is onboarding new folks, dealing with the change in times, and clearly communicating things. I think that will all help. And if people have other ideas on how to do any of this, or see something that I don't, please speak up.
And then, of course, if they disagree with whatever the decision is, there needs to be some method for redress.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mailing list, I mean, it's something where they can communicate and actually get feedback.
Yeah, and all of that has to do with more active involvement from maintainers. And I think with many CNCF projects, you see a shifting of the tide. And I see somebody raise their hand so nicely.
I know, I'm sorry. Go
ahead, please.
A lot of it's just transparency, and to what we just said, being able to say what the project's looking for and how people can start to get involved and contribute. And then it makes it easier for PR saying, okay, does this actually match up to where the project is going? If it does, you're probably going to get bubbled up a little higher, because it's what we want to, as a community, work towards.
Yeah. So I'll actually take an action to chase some of that stuff down and bring it up in front of everyone. Karina.
Really, I just wanted to use the hand raising thing because I had no idea where that was. But I do have a point. I saw your post. I think you put it on Twitter and probably LinkedIn or somewhere else too. You're asking for feedback about this topic, just in general. I assume that's for your other role.
Yes,
on the
that was more for
team.
my TOC role because I'm looking at it across the whole CNCF ecosystem. And so I'm asking about it in there. What we talk about here with Helm is not unique.
But I just wanted to mention that, I mean, a lot of people that work Helm also work many other projects. So having the discussion here is also helpful because, like, I know Scott works Argo. I don't know, you work a lot too, but so I'm wondering if you're capturing all that in a central location, if anybody else here has info for you, like how would you want to surface that back to you? Just
Yeah, I mean, if you want to
file.
surface it, yeah, I'm surfacing this through my other role with the TOC. And so if folks have feedback on it, feel free to reach out to me either in one of those places where I ask publicly or hit me up in Slack or shoot me an email. I'm looking for this kind of thing to bring to the TOC because it's one of the things we're talking about internally, because it surfaced itself on a number of projects. And so we're trying to understand the problem and look for ways of improving it while giving up patterns, trying to help projects figure out patterns they can use to improve it and share with each other. So everybody can kind of work through this season.
And I will just say that Helm has been one of the more transparent projects, which is amazing. So I know we're talking through, you know, how to push PRs through even faster, but yeah.
That all makes sense to me. What was said, but one comment was, yeah, the messaging last year at KubeCon in Detroit was pretty good, like just encouraging people to get involved. I would say once people decide to get involved, maybe channeling, figuring a way to channel the energy. Like it's not like it takes a little bit of I don't know, like effort to get over that hump of joining calls and things like that, and just being like, people are welcome, and is I think very helpful to just get people started. That'll be just one thought for me from someone who kind of started doing this recently.
Wait, were you here last week? Because I feel like we talked about this last week too.
I missed last week, unfortunately. Sorry.
Good to say it again. Sorry, Scott.
Scott, you got your hand raised, Scott.
Oh, I figured I'd do it too, just for fun. Yeah, we did talk about it last week, Karina and George. That's a really good point. Just to reiterate slightly, that is part of the goal of this Helm talk. There's also, that's coming to KubeCon. There's also good resources out there. One of the really good ones was a short series of videos that Matt Farina did for SUSE internally, and I think made a blog post publicly and made those public. So it's a really good walkthrough of the code base. That's just at least like the introduction to like getting people involved in what does this actually mean, but I know it's more than just the code base. So that's what we plan to cover in detail in that talk, and it will be recorded. And a lot of it, I mean, most of this is documented somewhere, almost all of it is, but except for maybe an introduction to the code base. And I think we can probably salvage from, or sort of scrape from some of that, consolidate it, and put out some maybe more updated pieces to steer people to immediately.
Yeah, and so that wasn't just a playlist for SUSE. I put it out for anybody. And here is a link to the playlist of videos.
Oh God, I'm sorry about, I don't want to misspeak, but I thought it was originally for SUSE, but okay, cool.
No, I just did it for anybody. And so there's a link to the channel. Feel free to share it with folks.
And just just in context, there are some, I mean, Matt, I think you could certainly speak to it if you needed to, but it's mostly the same. The code base is mostly the same. There are a few updates, you know, like OCI has become a full feature. There are certainly more improvements, but the overall structure, I think, is the same.
Yeah. Okay, we have got another topic I'd like to get to that's been added here, Ian, you probably want to talk about this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to move on, everyone, so we can get to our last topic. Ian, did you want to talk about the post rendering charts with hooks?
Yeah, so we were looking at basing a product feature on using post rendering, and then we kind of came across this isn't sending us a hook. So then we came across this issue, and I see there's been a couple pull requests with people, attempting to implement it and some feedback. And I'm kind of curious, like, where does this kind of stand from an overall Helm perspective? Is this like it's too big of a change to start implementing this now to actually, send the hooks through post rendering? Is it, like a Helm 3 kind of thing that, we're thinking about, or what? Yeah, just trying to kind of know where that is.
Well, I'll say a few things. First, I was looking at who labeled it as a bug. And the person who labeled it as a bug is the original author of the feature. So that's a pretty good sign of it's a bug. And so I think we would be open to getting this fixed. Is there an open pull? I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed on it. Is there a pull request open for it already?
Yeah, there is actually. I thought you had commented on the pull request as well. So if you scroll down to the
I may
bottom of
have.
it, it's 94 or 7948. And I believe at the bottom, I think it was you that commented, or no, no, actually it was Joe. It was Joe that commented on it, and said, "Doesn't this change the API for the post render?" And that seems to be kind of where it stopped. So,
Okay, I'll need to go take a look at it. I know Matt Butcher had feedback. Okay, so this is a rather old one, actually years old.
yeah, there was a newer one in the issue, but they actually said, "Hey, this pull request looks better than mine," so I closed mine, which was interesting.
Okay. Yes, so it's one of those things. I'm looking very quickly now at it. We'll have to look at the API. That is one of those big things. We don't make API changes, and so yeah, it's more than I'll look at here. But it is one of.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely seems to really limit the usefulness of the post render if you can't rely on it for, any particular, if a vendor is using the hooks, then you can't do any rewriting there. So you kind of have to go back to a Helm template kind of workflow.
Yeah, no, I understand. And so this is to speak to intent. Helm has built-in hooks, so to speak, not just within the charts that execute at certain times. Like you can add downloaders, right, and uploaders. And so we've looked at hooking in and making pluggable systems in certain places. And the post renderer was always implemented. Okay, we're going to add ad hoc scripts. We're not going to let plugins work with it. We'd always had grander ideas to solve something rather than something so quickly. And so it was kind of haphazardly thrown together. I can go ahead and review this, but it's been sitting there so long, I'm not sure if we'll get the author back to clean it up. And so, yes, we're very open to this, and I can give feedback on this particular one. But somebody else may need to carry it forward. And if we find a better way to do the same thing, like even through a plugin model, totally open to that as well, if somebody wants to contribute something like that. In fact, using plugins instead of post renderers is something or to use plugins for post rendering is one of those things we have talked about in the past instead of just scripts.
Just using the existing plugin module, but having people run like Helm template before, or in what kind of
so like our plugins, right, have certain places they execute, like a downloader, right? A downloader plugin. Well, if it doesn't see it's one of the core plugin types like HTTP or HTTPS, then it goes to plugins, right? If somebody used S3, it'll go see if there's an S3 plugin and it'll use that to go fetch something, right? So there's an opportunity to have a plugin that does say the same thing. Like here's a post renderer plugin, and figuring out a UX where somebody could say, use this post renderer plugin, and then it would use that as post rendering, and it could plug it in various different ways. And these are the kinds we had ideas for this, but nobody chased it forward because, it's the itch to scratch. The people who needed post rendering just hadn't gone down that path. They continue to use and even with its warts, what we have now. But yes, this is something we're open to fixing. And if we've got functional PRs, we're open to it.
Okay, cool.
I have one thought about this, Matt.
Yeah.
So it adds. So this is additive, and I know that this is not CLI output, but we've talked about how output could be considered breaking or non-breaking. And I was thinking that one way or the other, there are projects that really rely on this post rendering. It's hard for me to imagine any projects or any people that rely on post rendering that would break what they're doing if that additional hook information also came through. But if we found that it did, could we also resolve this by adding another flag, to allow people to opt into the additional hook information?
Yeah, I'm wondering the same thing. And so we will need to go look and maybe see if some of the existing post renderers will be affected by this and how, and chase some of that down. And I know some folks using post rendering, so I'll see if I can ping them to get their input on it.
Awesome. And I just pinged Hida from the maintainer of the Flux Helm controller, or the main maintainer of the Flux Helm controller, because that uses Helm's SDK for post rendering very, very heavily, basically to its full extent currently. So at least we can also get input from that side too.
All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour here, so we're wrapping up. I don't want to necessarily go over because I know from folks' time. So given this, do we have anybody? So our next meeting will be in 2 weeks because there's KubeCon EU next week. Does anybody want to sign up for any of the roles? Whether it is the specifically, I'm looking for moderator or notes or issue triage or anything in the in-between.
I can do triage.
Yeah, George, not team triage.
Okay, I can moderate next time.
I'll do notes.
Sorry to cut in on you yet. Okay, so we've got those things figured out. Ian, does this help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, if you just, I guess update that issue with some thoughts on kind of, where we want to take it or the pull request, and I can kind of, decide where we go from there. So.
Okay, I can do it as soon as we get off here before I close the window and get distracted.
Oh, awesome. Great.
So.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, we are at time. Does anybody have any last final thoughts, comments, anything?
Yes, only I probably missed this because I was a few minutes late, but are we we're canceling next week's meeting because of KubeCon, or is it still happening?
We always cancel them the week of KubeCon, so I just said we would cancel it. Didn't ask necessarily because I know a number of people will be there.
That sounds good.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank
See y'all.
Have fun. Keep going. So.
Bye.